Hello, everyone. Welcome. Even if it's a day off for many of you, the news machine, as you well know, never stops. And we have some deeply important and, frankly, very alarming reports coming in today. The first one is from Germany, and I have to tell you, it is worrying. In Hamburg, the police have actually shut down one of the city's well-known bridges, all because of a dead seagull. You heard me correctly, a single dead bird. Why? Because the authorities are terrified of the spread of bird flu. Now, for those of you who are new here, you should know I didn't just start doing this yesterday. I spent years inside one of the big mainstream media corporations. I saw with my own eyes how they shape and twist the stories to fit a pre-approved narrative. I couldn't stomach it, so I walked away. Now I'm independent, I answer to no one but you, and I can tell you what I truly see happening. And if you believe in that mission, if you want this independent voice to continue, please do me a favor and click that like button. And of course, subscribe to the channel. And if you're able, perhaps even consider becoming a channel sponsor. It's the only thing that keeps this operation running, and it allows me to keep bringing you the truth. I'd be incredibly grateful for your support. Now, back to Germany. This situation is far more serious than it might first appear. There is a growing anxiety across the country about a new outbreak and the rapid, frightening spread of this avian flu. Just yesterday morning, the police were forced to close the Köhlbrand Bridge in Hamburg for a short time simply because a seagull, which had perished from an unknown cause, was lying right there on the road. This has never, ever happened before. Think about that. The police and the fire service arrived on the scene immediately, and while all traffic was halted, a firefighter kitted out in a full hazmat suit had to remove the dead bird from the carriageway and, as they put it, dispose of it properly. Cases of deceased wild birds are being recorded more and more frequently in Germany in recent days, which is a terrible sign. Authorities are now advising extreme caution in every similar case, and they are urging the public under no circumstances to touch any dead birds they find, but to report them immediately. What does this mean in practical terms? Well, as of last Friday, Hamburg has imposed a mandatory lockdown for all domestic poultry. We're talking chickens, ducks, and geese, no exceptions, all to be kept in strictly enclosed facilities. This is not a drill. As a result of this new outbreak, we already know that hundreds of thousands of commercial domestic birds have had to be removed. They've been culled, and scientists are now voicing fears that we are dealing with a new variant of the virus, one that could potentially even adapt to humans. And this isn't just Germany. The same bird flu has now been detected in Austria, where they are also taking urgent measures. So believe me, we will be watching this situation very, very closely. Also from Germany, we've learned that the capital, Berlin, is set to close its largest reception center for refugees from Ukraine. It's located in the former Tegel airport, which was specifically converted to house people. The plan is to shut it down completely by the end of this year. At its peak, it housed around 5,000 refugees, but that number has now dropped to fewer than 2,000. As always, time will tell what happens next. But that's not the only emergency in Berlin. The German capital apparently managed to avoid a horrifying event, perhaps by a sheer miracle. Special police units have detained a man identified as Abdullah, who, according to German media, specifically the publication Bild, was allegedly preparing an attack. It's now known that they discovered materials for making explosive devices in his possession. He's been taken to a detention center in the Neukölln district of Berlin and is scheduled to appear before a judge. According to security service sources, this Syrian citizen had three registered places of residence in Berlin. Abdullah is now facing charges of preparing a serious crime that endangers the state. The details of his possible target, however, have not yet been disclosed. So, we'll have to watch carefully for what they announce publicly. And while we're on the subject of Germany, we have to add another warning, but this one from a completely different direction. This time, it's from Germany's own Association of Manufacturers. They've issued a stark statement. China's dominance in the pharmaceutical industry is threatening the security of supplies, not just in Germany, but across all of Europe. Does this surprise anyone? Over the past few years, China has managed to seize control of a huge portion of the supply chains for pharmaceutical ingredients. And now, after all this time, it has created a profound problem for the security of all our medical supplies. It's just staggering, isn't it? If you're finding this analysis useful, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And I am curious, what do you think about this dependency? Let me know in the comments below. Now, a new study from this industry association apparently demonstrates the full severity of the situation. And why is it so dangerous? Well, the answer is simple. Germany and other countries in the European Union are now completely dependent on imports from China. And in the current climate of trade conflicts and rising geopolitical tensions, what happens when those exports are restricted? It means we will likely see supply interruptions, which will cause medicine shortages, soaring prices, and most importantly, enormous problems for patients. And if you ask, well, how did China achieve this leadership? What exactly happened? The answer, again, is painfully simple. It was a concerted state effort. Tax breaks for their pharmaceutical companies, multi-billion-dollar investments in research, massive state support, and of course, the protection of their own internal market. Just last year, China was reportedly developing 1,250 new medicines. That's almost as many as the United States, which had just over 1,400, and it is significantly more than the entire European Union combined. So Germany is being told it must urgently review its strategy. It needs investments in European production, it needs new alliances, and it needs diversification of its supplies. That's the explanation we're given. The conclusion is stark. The world is changing, and pharmaceuticals are no exception. China has already become a pharma superpower, and if Europe fails to take urgent action, the consequences could be incredibly serious. These are the realities that have now been openly stated, and there's no escaping them. Meanwhile, in European politics, the Hungarian Prime Minister, Viktor Orban, has openly accused, and I want you to notice this, the Polish Prime Minister, Donald Tusk, of attacking Hungary. Why? To try and distract attention from his own political problems back home. Orban posted this on the social network X. He stated that Tusk has launched another attack on Hungary precisely because he has serious problems at home in Poland. Tusk's party lost the presidential election, his government is unstable, and he himself is losing in the polls. Orban claims that Tusk, along with Manfred Weber, has become one of the most loud, warlike politicians in Europe. He says Tusk cannot change course because he has turned Poland into a vassal of Brussels. That is very strong language, I must repeat, from the Hungarian leader, who stressed that his country has no intention of following the path chosen by the Polish Government. And we must immediately add that within Poland's own political circles, there have been whispers for some time that a scenario to replace Donald Tusk with the well-known Radosław Sikorski as Prime Minister could happen even before the 2027 election. However, the majority of Poles are against such an idea. But let's be honest, if there's a desire to replace Tusk with Sikorski, they will do it, regardless of what the majority of Polish citizens want. We have a living example of this. In the Netherlands, the most popular right-wing politician, Geert Wilders, effectively became number 2 after the election. Everyone understood perfectly well what happened, but they all remained silent, except for Geert Wilders himself, of course. And there are more than enough examples just like that, as you well know. As of right now, 51% of voters in Poland's ruling coalition are opposed to replacing Tusk with Sikorski. And in the polls, the president of Poland, Karol Nawrocki, continues to lead the trust ratings among the country's citizens. The head of the Foreign Ministry and Deputy Prime Minister, Radosław Sikorski, is in second place. Now turning to new reports from the United States. The American President Donald Trump made another post on his social network in which he declared that his meeting with China's leader Xi was, quote, wonderful for both of our countries. This meeting, according to Donald Trump, will lead to everlasting peace and success, the US president added. I'm stressing this for a reason. You'll recall that some Western media outlets had previously labeled that very same meeting unsuccessful for Washington. We've also learned that the United States will not be sending any high-ranking officials to the climate negotiations taking place in Brazil this month. Those are the UN climate talks, for anyone who doesn't know. So, no senior US officials will be at the climate summit. My, how things change. It has also been announced that the acting president of Syria, the now very well-known Ahmed al-Shara, will be traveling to Washington for an official visit. This will be the first visit by a head of the Syrian state to the US capital. Some sources say the visit is planned for the next 2 weeks. According to other reports, al-Shara will travel to Washington on November 10th, where he will be personally received by US President Donald Trump at the White House. And as everyone has already understood, Ahmed al-Shara, who was previously on a wanted list as particularly dangerous, is now welcomed in many countries as a particularly respected leader, which is just further proof that everything in our world can change and change very, very quickly. Meanwhile, on the islands neighboring Venezuela, the population is reportedly stocking up on food full scale, fearing a major military conflict. But the most extraordinary part is this. The Nobel Peace Prize laureate for 2025, Maria Corina Machado, apparently supports a possible escalation in relations between the US and Venezuela. Why? Because she believes it is the last chance to overthrow Nicolas Maduro. Did you get that? The Peace Prize laureate is not against a war. Maria Machado, as you know, is an opposition activist from Venezuela, and it was for this opposition activity, apparently, that she was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize a few weeks ago. If an overthrow does occur, she will be counting on replacing Maduro. And what's more, surprisingly enough, the goal of regime change in Venezuela is shared equally by both the Republicans and the Democrats. On this one narrow issue, their interests intersect in a most amazing way. We will, of course, continue to observe what happens next, and I trust that I'll be the first to bring you much of the most important analysis. So, these are the key developments for right now, and they speak volumes. We've seen Germany in a state of near panic over a new bird flu variant, leading to citywide shutdowns for a single bird. We've seen Berlin close a major refugee center while simultaneously rolling up a potential extremist plot. We have the stark warning that all of Europe is now hostage to China for its essential medicines. In politics, we have Orban accusing Tusk of warmongering to save his own job. And in the US, we see President Trump praising his meeting with Xi while snubbing the Global Climate Summit and preparing to roll out the red carpet for Syria's new leader. And finally, the bizarre situation in Venezuela, where a Nobel Peace Prize winner is apparently cheering on a potential military conflict. These are the dots, and as you can see, they are all connecting. Please share your own thoughts in the comments. What do you make of all this? And once again, if you value this independent analysis, please take a second to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and if you have the means, please do consider becoming a sponsor. Your support is, quite frankly, what makes all of this possible, and it means more than I can say. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll be back tomorrow as the story develops.